I've got good news. Velorock is no longer setting the Badlands on fire, but sludges are now poisoning the Badlands, and oh man, we may have a video coming up in the future talking about my opinion on the Badlands and how the power balance has been all over the place. But for the sake of this video, we're just gonna tell you what the best decks are to grind a legend with, and what better way to tell you guys what decks that grind a legend very effectively by linking the most recent Vicious Syndicate article that just came out today as I was recording this video. So, you know, if you want, you know, extra bits of data in order to figure out what the best decks to climb are, these are the most popular decks at all of the ranks, but in top legend, there are definitely some power outliers, with 23% of the meta being Sludge Warlock, 16% being Control Warrior, and 11% being Plague Death Knight. So these are by far the best decks to be playing right now, but I'm gonna go ahead and tell you guys that I didn't put Plague Death Knight on my list, not because I don't think it's a good deck, but just because I think you guys know what the list is, and there's really not all too many changes. But in case you want to see what the perfect Death Knight Plague deck is, go ahead and check out Vicious Syndicate's website, to where you can get all these decks at the very bottom of the screen. But just make sure that you actually read through this, because there's a lot of data here that is very important to understand. Like, why is Sludge Warlock the best deck in the meta? It's because it is the most popular deck that you'll be seeing, as well as the most powerful deck that you're seeing with the best win rate at top legend. So that is the reason why it's just by far the best deck. But if you want to see all these numbers broken down, you can go ahead and check out the most recent Vicious Syndicate article. So let's go ahead and talk about the best decks in the game, even though I did already tell you guys what exactly are the best decks in terms of archetype, but these archetypes can range very massively, to say the absolute least. And I will also say that in this particular video, there are going to be a lot of fun decks, because unfortunately, I only really have like 5 archetypes to show you of like the best 5 decks in the game, just simply due to the fact that the power differences between decks right now is honestly kind of astonishing, and I am definitely expecting some of these top decks to get nerfed in some way or another. But in all honesty, I'm just going to go ahead and use this moment to say that nerfs are not going to solve this problem. Only rotation is going to solve this problem. So Blizzard is probably just going to put a band-aid on the Hearthstone meta for the next month or two until rotation happens, and then we're going to have some of these cards either get reverted back to their former glory, like maybe Velorock. Please don't unnerf Velorock, Blizzard. That card needs to stay dead. Or there might be other ways that they decide to change the meta. But now that we've gotten that out of the way, let's talk about why this is probably one of the best decks to be playing right now, because this is just, it just deals an absurd amount of damage. This is an easy way of being able to set up a 60+ damage combo, because double Razorfin plus all the armor cards after you play your Odyn does ridiculous amounts of armor stacking, and every single time you gain armor, even with like a hero power or a verse whiff, you will gain an additional 4 armor if you have 2 of these rock stars on the field. But some people are wondering, is this deck good enough at controlling in order to actually get to the combo? And the answer is surprisingly yes. Like, some people are confused why we don't run brawls, why we don't run sanitize, no bellowing flames. Well, the simple answer is that we don't have Ignis, so we don't really want to be running the forge cards, but they're just not necessary. We have cards like Bladestorm, we have Aftershocks, and we have Trial by Fire are really the only cards that you need in order to remove the field, because every other turn you're going to be removing something and gaining armor, or drawing cards and gaining armor, so you're just never gonna die. So it's about using your HP as a resource, and then using the removal tools at the perfect opportunity. Like, case in point with Bladestorm. Bladestorm is a card that is very important in order to deal with large boards, like for example against a dragon druid. You want to save Bladestorm for those dragon golems, but there are some other situations that are more meta relevant, like against Warlock for example, where Bladestorm is the way that you deal with the turn 4 7/7s, and if there's nothing on the field, then yeah, that's an easy clear. But most of the time when Warlocks play Forge on 2, or I'm sorry, they play Forge on 3, then you know, okay, time for me to kill a minion and set up for that Bladestorm. So knowing how to utilize these cards is very important in order to do well with this deck. But I really do believe this is one of the best decks to be playing right now, because Meaty hit rank 1 legend with this deck, climbing from like 17 legend all the way to rank 1, having like a 44 and 13 win rate. It was absolutely insane. But if you want to play a deck that's very similar to like Nature Shaman, actually, this is like the warrior take on Nature Shaman, and I am stealing that from a comment from a previous YouTube video because it just 100% makes sense. If you want to play like a Nature Shaman, but instead it's warrior, this is probably the way of going about it. But if you're someone that likes that classic control warrior, remove everything your opponent does, gain armor, and then somehow win on the board, because this deck actually has ways of being able to pressure boards because of the excavate treasures that you can get from this deck. The Ox for like Ragnaros into like another 8/8 with taunt is just a great way of being able to pressure onto the field. So it just makes sense that Control Warrior now can utilize the Excavate package to the best of its ability, due to the fact that you're always removing, you're always gaining armor, and you're always drawing cards. But the big deal between this deck and all the other decks is that this deck slaughters anything that has any remote weaknesses. And what exactly do I mean by that? There are a lot of decks right now in this meta that cannot outlast combos from like Warlock, for example. But this 40 card Control Warrior can essentially outlast everything in the meta, ... if you play your cards right and if you're off of the right draws. Like, you can out armor the Sludge Lock OTK with this deck very effectively, and the fact that you also have minions on the field in order to soak up some of the sludges just proves my point on how hard it is to kill 40 card Warrior right now. I believe that No Hands Gamer ended up hitting rank 1 legend with this deck in particular, so we have the second rank 1 legend deck that we're showcasing, and I will be making a deck guide about this video in the next couple of days. But regardless, 40 card Warrior seems to be the best way to play Control Warrior if you want like that classic Wallet Warrior Control Warrior gameplay. And the last warrior that I'm going to show you guys is actually a new take on Brann Warrior, and I'm calling it 11 mana Brann because this deck plays Audio Amplifier, and the reason why we want Audio Amplifier is because this deck can sometimes struggle with hand size. So having an additional card in hand in order to make the Acolyte of Pain into Aftershock's turn a little bit more consistent without overdrawing a card is very crucial for this deck in particular, because you cannot mill your good card. You cannot mill the Brann. You absolutely need it. You can't mill the Boomboss, and in some situations you probably can't afford to mill the Reno, so having the extra card slot really does make a difference. However, there is another reason to run this card. It's for the 11 mana, and the reason why is because in the ETC we have Zola, so there is a possibility of being able to play Boomboss into Zola if you want to try and outlast a 40 card deck, like a 40 card Warrior, for example, that's not really drawing through its cards. Now that you have the Zola, you have 2 additional Boombosses that you can get, which means you have 18 bombs that you can shuffle into your deck. Best case scenario. And against like a slower deck, this just feels like the way to go. And in the ETC, I've also put Theatar for the matchups where you want to steal a card, but I've also just put in a second Trial by Fire, because more times than not, you're going to be able to play ETC with the Brann, so you can pick Zola and Trial by Fire, and if all you need is one card because you don't need Zola, then you can just pick the Trial by Fire. So I think this ETC makes a lot of sense. I did see this on ladder, however, I had to fill in the ETC myself, so these are the choices that I made myself in order to make this deck a little bit better, and I really do believe the ETC makes a lot of sense. But other than that, it's just typical Brann Warrior. Steam Cleaner does need to be in the main deck, because unfortunately, like the other warriors that are playable, you do need the Steam Cleaner in this deck because you need to activate your Brann, and if plagues are getting in the way, then you have to be able to get around that somehow. Unlike the other decks, Steam Cleaner really doesn't make a lot of sense, because you would rather just focus on proactively initiating your game plan and killing your opponent versus playing Steam Cleaner, waiting for the opportunity to play it, and then there are situations where even when you do play this card, plagues are still shuffled into your deck anyway. But for Brann Warrior in particular, I do believe one Steam Cleaner in the main deck is not a terrible idea. So if you want to play Brann Warrior and want to like actually play a deck that feels like it's built in order to make the Highlander payoff not too much of a detriment, then I believe this might be the best way of playing Brann Warrior and actually winning games in Hearthstone. Next, we have the purple elephant in the room, which is Sludge Warlock. There are like 4 different decks that I'm going to be showcasing with this list, only because it seems to be that this deck is just working one way or another, and I want to show you guys that even if you don't have some of these cards, you might be able to play Sludge Warlock, because it really just does come down to the Salesman on 1, the Assistant on 2, the Sludge on Wheels on 3, into the Waste Remover on 4 in a lot of games. It's just about having that consistent curve and being able to blow out your opponent with a bunch of stats out of nowhere. There's also Forge of Wills into 4-drop that's really good. There's Trolley Problem, which is essentially a 3-mana 6/6 with Rush, which is absolutely insane, and you don't even care about the discard quick draw or not, because most of the time Trolley Problem is either going to get rid of a 0-mana card from the Salesman, or you discard a Furnace Fuel or a Sludge from hand, depending on how you've played the deck. And that's the reason why Furnace Fuel is in this deck now. Again, like, I know that I've said in the past that this card's probably not all too good, but with how consistently people are being able to discard this card from hand, and how frequently my opponents also discard it from the bottom of their deck, Lucky high rollers, I know. It just tends to work really well, and Norris did hit rank 1 legend with this deck in particular. So that's 3 rank 1 legend decks that I have now shown you guys. We are definitely on top of the best decks in the meta, but what are some other ways to play Sludge Warlock if you just don't want to play this version of the deck? One way that you can definitely play Sludge Warlock is taking a page out of Denim Blue's book, and that's why I've called this Blue Warlock, because this is a list that came from Twitch streamer and Hearthstone Twitter personality Denim Blue. So this is his version of the deck. He's got 1 Furnace Fuel, but he actually makes room for the Glowstone Guardian, or the Gloomstone Guardian, I apologize. And the reason why this card is not too bad is because it gives you extra consistency out of the Forge of Wills. And as of right now, Forge of Wills has the highest mulligan win rate out of all of the cards. Yes, that includes the Disposal Assistant as well as the Sludge on Wheels. So there's a lot of ways that Forge on Wheels just wins the game. So going all in on making the big stats as quickly as possible just works. And the funniest thing about this card is that more times than not, you really don't want to forge it. Like, you can discard 2 cards and potentially discard 2 Sludges, which is really, really good. Or you can discard the Furnace on Wheels for extra card draw. Or maybe you just get rid of a card that you really just don't care about. Like, what if I got rid of, like, a Miracle Salesman when I haven't had a chance to play it on turn 1? Sometimes you can just discard the right cards in the right moment. There are some situations where destroying a mana crystal can be better, but it's kind of funny how the Forge, it lets your opponent know what is going on, and that's the reason why you usually don't want to do this, because you don't want to cue in your opponent on your potential game plan. So I would say that if it's on turn 2 and you have to choose between tapping and forging this card, I would actually just tap, so that way you can get more of your Sludge cards in your hand faster. But if you want to play the Gloomstone Guardian, this might be the best version of Sludge Warlock to be playing, and I would highly recommend you play this deck now, because it is very likely this deck is going to get nerfed to some capacity. And next up, I have a very fun Warlock that I want to show you guys. There is a debate that I should have saved this for the fun decks, but I don't want Sludge Warlock being in the fun decks whatsoever, so we're just going to show this deck off right now. What exactly is going on here? This is a deck that is trying to utilize Ignis and Forge cards to where we are playing a really weird combo mid-range burst version of the deck. I really don't know what's going on here, and I forget exactly who I got this from. I believe this is someone in my Twitch chat that linked me this deck, being like, I actually won with this deck. Do you think there's any potential for it? And I believe this is like a fun way of like trying to make Sludge Warlock into more of like a mid-range late game deck, instead of just, you know, killing your opponent as quickly as possible with the Chaos Creation combo, which you still have access to. But Sarg has been making his way into Sludge Warlock, and personally, I don't think Sarg is that good. So if you're going to put Sarg into a deck, you might as well just go all in on making the deck like as unpredictable as possible with an Ignis, with Disciple of Sarg, as well as the other Forge card to give consistency to Ignis. And then there's Darkon as like another lifesteal card. This is just a card you really don't care about in Sludge Warlock, because the lifesteal is not that important, and the damage is definitely, like, you don't really care about the damage in this deck. But you still have the curve, you have Astalor for consistency, you have Finley as like a really good tool of being able to put Sludges at the bottom if you want to initiate a combo. But yeah, if you want to play Sludge Warlock, but you don't want to feel bad about playing the perfect 30, this might be a fun way of being able to play a powerful archetype to where you're still going to win games, but you're definitely going to be throwing some win rate percentage out the window, because you are playing more fun cards. And now, this is the part of the video where I have to say that some of the decks that you just don't want to see on top of the meta are on top of the meta, and Naga Demon Hunter is still one of them. I believe this is like 1 card difference, because I remember recommending a going down swinging deck not too long ago. But Fellerin was not in the deck. But Fellerin just feels like it should be in this deck, because there are going to be situations where you don't draw your Sharpshooter or your Sigil of Time. So you have to try and initiate onto the board one way or another. And Fellerin's like a good secondary win condition to a degree. Not a win condition in terms of like it actually wins the game, but a win condition as in it helps bridge the turns, so that way you're not just dealing a whole, like you're not just taking a whole bunch of damage because you're not on the field. So Fellerin does feel very, very good. However, the rest of this deck has pretty much already been figured out for the longest time. The only new inclusion from the mini set was the Quick Pick, and Quick Pick definitely does deserve a spot in this deck, because if you don't have the Sharpshooter or the Sigil of Time, you gotta cycle through the deck one way or another. So if you're someone that is a real big fan of Naga Demon Hunter, I would say play this deck now, because apparently the Hearthstone community is gunning for this card to be nerfed again, pun intended, because I mean, I don't think this card needs to be nerfed in terms of like, you know, If we nerf this, Demon Hunter has absolutely nothing, but this is just a card that is getting a lot of people frustrated with it, no matter if it's even OTKing you on turn 4 or if it just does what it normally does by like turn 5, turn 6, turn 7. The Hearthstone community wants this card to be nerfed one way or another, and I'm just making this point right now just in case you guys have been waiting to play this deck. You might not want to wait anymore. This deck might be getting nerfed, so if you want to play some Naga Demon Hunter and get some easy wins on your way to Legend, you might want to do it now before this deck potentially gets nerfed. And next up, we have my favorite deck of all time, Mining Rogue. And it turns out the deck has really taken a hit to where the game plan is like almost completely changed with this deck, to where now we are not even running the Shatter Shambler, because unfortunately the next Death Rattle minion that you play dies is just not that good of an effect. Most people ran this card not just for the killing of the Death Rattle, but for the cheating of the mana of the Scourge Illusionist. But now we're kind of just going with all-in tempo, where we're just trying to either have one of two things happen. We can still get the Drilly, but what would be top deck Drilly? Now we have the Thunderbringer combo. Like, I really don't know what Rogue players are doing right now, because I want to say this deck is not that consistent, but this is the deck that Vicious Syndicate themselves are pushing right now for Rogue. And I do understand the argument for like Sketchy Stranger and like Tez Greymane, because you have like the extra secrets that really can impact the game, because there's nothing like playing, you know, 5 objections in one game, typical Rogue combos, right? But this deck really did take a hit with the Shatter Shambler nerf, to where we kind of have to go with like the scam package right now. And I'll go ahead and say that Rogue is not all too common at top Legend. Like, it is there. It's definitely there to a degree, but the numbers have gone down drastically since 2 of their cards got nerfed. I would not be surprised to see Shatter Shambler get reverted when the rotation happens, but I could definitely say that Velorok deserved this nerf. He should stay at the stat cost, because we should be able to kill him and not have to worry about a 3-6 absolutely rolling through the entire game. So yeah, good thing that Velorok got nerfed, but this deck definitely feels a lot weaker. But if you're someone that just loves the Rogue archetype or loves Excavate, Mining Rogue in general, then this might be the best way of playing the deck, and you're not always just going to win with Scorpion scams and Velorok scams. Now you can win with Thunderbringer scams. So we should honestly just call this New Scam Rogue, because that's pretty much what we're dealing with here. And now the last best deck that we're going to be talking about is Rainbow DK. And again, yes, Plague DK is absolutely a fine playable deck. And if anyone in the comments ends up saying, why is Plague DK not in this deck? I'm going to reference this part of the video. And it's like, bro, did you even watch, or are you trolling me right now? It's okay if you're trolling me in the comments. I 100% appreciate, you know, those kind of trolling comments where it's like, I got you, streamer, I baited you. But if you're someone that's like, you know, why aren't we running Plague DK? Because Rainbow DK exists. Why would I play an unfun, boring archetype that really forces my game plan on my opponent, because they have to draw less cards in order to activate my game plan? I would just rather do the best tempo plays and play the coolest deck in the game right now, because Rainbow DK is just so much fun. I'm just really glad that Climactic Necrotic Explosion is finally a playable card, and I've made like 4 or 5 videos talking about Rainbow DK already, and I will keep talking about Rainbow DK as long as it's a powerhouse in the meta. But why is this deck good? What exactly makes this deck playable? Well, it beats Warrior. Very, very simple. It beats Warrior because you don't allow their Odyn stacked armor to actually hit you in the face, because you're always going to freeze them. You literally have 6 turns that you can deny, and there's no way you're not going to be able to pressure damage with this deck, because you have Corpse Bride to summon a 10/10 minion, and then you have Stitch Giants attached to them, to where the best possible high roll is to have 10 corpses by turn 5. Play the Corpse Bride into double Giant, and that is literally 5 mana, 30/30 of stats all on the field at once. Oh my god, how does that not make you want to play this deck? We've also got Sickly Grimy. We've also got the Acolyte of Death working perfectly with crop rotation. The only difference to this deck, I believe, is that they took out the Plague Strikes for Chillfall and Baron, and the reason why I believe we definitely want this card in the deck is because we have to draw. We have to actually cycle through our deck, so that way we have these gigantic, bombastic swings in tempo by either playing a bunch of poisonous crop rotations and then playing big minions immediately after, or having the Primus to set up to make up the Odyn turn on turn 8 really, really awkward, having our Reska combos enabled. Like, being able to draw through the deck is very important, and I'm sorry, playing a Plague Strike, it's not good. Just cut this card from your deck for, like, literally anything, and I think it's better. You could put Vizier, you could put Astalor, you could even put in Arms Dealer if you don't run Arms Dealer. That's how bad I believe Plague Strike is in the deck. But overall, this is what Vicious Syndicate is recommending for Rainbow DK, but this is not what I would recommend as a Rainbow DK enthusiast, I guess. I have a different list that I believe you guys are going to like a lot more. This would be the deck that I would recommend if you want to actually climb the Hearthstone ranks while playing Rainbow DK. And I do have a video coming out about this list in particular in case you guys want to know how to play it. But very, very, you know, simply put, the reason why this deck works is because you are just always pushing tempo. And that's why we have cards like Miracle Salesman in the deck. We have Vizier, in order to discover some high roll cards, because every now and again we need AoE, we need big removal to stop like these gigantic minions from hitting us in the face. We need some comeback ability, and when Rubian Vizier finds Corpse Explosion, oh my god, are you feeling like a god when that happens. We've also got Hell Yeah in the deck, which just makes a lot of sense against the heavy draw cards, or the heavy cycle decks that you will be seeing on ladder, as well as the fact that this disrupts Warlock to a degree. Just feels like we absolutely want this card in the deck because it has a lot of meta applications, specifically at top 100 legend and top 1000 legend. But if you want to sub out this card for something, you can go ahead and put in whatever it is that you have your heart set on. Hell yeah, it's not exactly like the greatest card if you're grinding to legend, but I believe I have to run this card at my particular MMR. But this is my version of the deck that I believe is really, really consistent, to where if you want to play some more fun cards like the Vizier and the Salesman, instead of feeling like you have to always play maximum tempo because you have Murlockula in your hand, for example, I believe this is the best way of playing Rainbow DK, and as of right now, my win rate is fairly decent with it, to say the least. And now we are getting into the fun decks of the meta, and I actually have a thread that I want to let you guys know about, because PocketTrain hit rank 1 legend playing some of the weirdest decks that I've seen, and it's not that this deck in particular is really good. No, it's actually quite the opposite. PocketTrain was playing with a whole bunch of different decks at top legend, to where these are the goofiest decks that he was also winning with. So we have the 30 card Pig Odyn Warrior, we've got his version of Rainbow DK. So starting with the Odyn Warrior, very, very self-explanatory, nothing really crazy here. But then we have this weird Demon Hunter. I really don't know what's going on here, but all of these decks will be available in the description if you do want to play these decks, because my god, they are just really, really weird. But he only went 1-3, and apparently the only game that he won, his opponent conceded on turn 1. It's a really, really wacky timeline that we live in when it comes to Hearthstone decks. But what else is there? There is Rainbow DK, which is the typical list with Plague Strike. I don't know why he's playing this list. I think he's just playing whatever it was available in his collection. But I would say don't play Plague Strike. But he went 4-1 with the deck. It does just tend to work. There's the big Paladin that we'll be talking about here in a second. This is a very fun deck that can actually win games. I believe I'm like 6-4 with this deck as of right now. So this deck actually has some very real meta applications. And then the last deck on the list, aside from Naga Demon Hunter, is just regular Sludge Warlock with Defile in it. I don't know why. Defile and Sarg. This deck just probably wins because he's playing Sludge Warlock, and Sludge Warlock is like ridiculously powerful right now. So here's some fun decks that you can get from World Champion PocketTrain. But what are some other fun decks? Because I have 11 other decks that I want to show you guys that can maybe get you playing Hearthstone again if you're not really a big fan of this meta and you don't care that much about winning in ranked. So first things first, I'm going to go ahead and plug my Rainbow DK Sire decks, because these are probably the most fun way of being able to play Rainbow DK and Sire Denathrius, because this card's about to rotate out, and pretty much since this card's been nerfed, Sire Denathrius has not been playable, like, at all. Because the only real deck this fit into when he was meta-relevant was Druid that had ton of, like, little minions, like, Scale of Onyxia minions trading into everything. And Sire Denathrius was just a powerhouse in Druid because you also had 20 mana available to you. Well, now, the reason why Sire Denathrius works in this deck in particular is because you're always killing minions, to the point where Sire Denathrius being in your mulligan is not even the worst thing in the world, and actually might be the best way of being able to juice him up to where you will play him on turn 10 and you will gain a whole bunch of life, or potentially even win the game because of it. The way I like to describe this card, it's like a second Climactic Necrotic Explosion. It's just got a different way of needing to fulfill the combo, to where you just need a minion to die instead of spending corpses. But the big trade-off is that you do need this card in your hand in order for it to be actually useful. But the justification even if you don't have this card in your mulligan, is how quickly this deck can draw with the Acolyte of Death into crop rotation combos. To where even if you get this card in your hand by like turn 3, turn 4, it's still really good. So other than that, if you want to play a fun version of Rainbow DK with like Runes of Darkness instead of actually running the weapon, then you can go this direction. Feel free to change any cards here if you feel like you need to run the Crusher because you are seeing Warriors. That was like the #1 bit of feedback that I got about this deck, is that our favorite matchup in the Warrior is now significantly worse because we are not running the Crusher card. So feel free to put this card into your deck if you do want to beat up on Warrior. But there's another way that we can play Rainbow DK that I have not seen anybody else talk about except for my video about it. And that would be the Renathal Rainbow. I have not seen anybody else try this deck out at all, to where if you want to make this deck work, you're going to have to watch my video talking about this and seeing how the deck actually performed, because it did perform a lot better than you would originally think. We have the Crusher and we have the Runes of Darkness in this deck for maximum weapons, and there might be some situations to where you want to discover the Plague weapon if you're going to lock out some Reno decks. And before you guys even ask, no, I will not make a Renathal Reno Rainbow DK. I will not even make a 30-card Reno DK for Rainbow, because unfortunately you do need to spend as many corpses as possible, and the only real way of being able to do that is essentially to do what all the other decks that run Reno are doing. You run Reno with duplicates and you just focus on drawing throughout the entire deck, to where I don't think I can recommend Reno being in this deck. So just don't go that approach. This deck's already wacky enough because we're running Renathal, we're running Fizzle, we're running Hell Yeah. We have a lot of good tempo cards like Pozic, Sylvanas, and Sire D. So do you really need to add any other memes to this deck? I don't think so. This is about as much memes as you can add to the deck before you start actually hurting the win rate of this particular list. But if you want to play a fun take on Rainbow DK and you want to confuse some people on the ladder and then throw out Sire D in order to prove that you are the Giga Chad of Hearthstone, then go ahead and start playing some Rainbow Renathal DK, because this is probably the most fun deck that you could be playing right now that can actually win games. I have to apologize to you guys, because I said that Plague DK would not be in this list, but apparently I forgot about the most based way to play to play Plague DK, and that is Cagehead. So you can clearly see that this deck is not nearly as good as the other Plague DK, because we're literally not running Chain Guardian. That's right. Who wants Chain Guardian when you can play Cagehead, kill him off, get a 9/9 boar, and the whole reason why we're doing this is because the boar is 9 mana, which means that the rat that you bring from the skeleton crew will just bring back the 9/9 as an 11/11 with charge. How is that not the coolest thing that you've seen in Plague DK in the longest time? So now the ladder is going to start filling up with this deck, because you guys are going to play this. You are going to have success with it. I have played 1 game with this deck and I died on turn 5, so that's my experience with the deck, but I do believe that the meme and the actual flavor of this deck is so good to where, you know, if you got a golden Cagehead, you might as well make use of it, right? And I might try getting some clips of this deck for a future deck video to see if it's actually doable, but I mean, I don't know, man. This deck's just really, really funny, and I had to show it in my funny meme decks part of this video. So if you're someone that's really bored about Plague DK, why not add a Cagehead into the deck and see how your win rate is then? Up next, we have the only good Druid deck that I've seen since the nerfs happened to Druid, and unfortunately, Pendant of Earth not gaining armor absolutely destroyed the Anubricon combos that were possible, to where Beetle Druid might be playable still, but I have no idea what the list is looking like right now, because the biggest issue that I see with Beetle Druid is how do you gain the armor in order to do the bombastic OTK with Anubricon like you used to? Like, you're gonna have to use the Seedling in order to, or the Frost Lotus in order to draw a whole bunch of cards and gain armor, and then hope that armor sticks in order to get that kind of payoff. So I don't really know if a Anubricon Beetle is a good OTK or not, but Jambre has been climbing in top, I believe, top 50, at least top 100 on the EU server with this version of the deck. And this is just another Jambre special, to where it's pretty much a Highlander Druid, but we have duplicates of Nourish, Seedling, and Embrace of Nature. That makes a lot of sense. We need the card draw, we need the armor, and we need the ramp. So you just need those duplicates in this deck. You will cycle through your deck to where Restraza and Reno will hopefully not feel like they're disadvantaged in the deck, but you still have ANR into Shadow Reflection combos, and I wonder if we want to put in a second Shadow Reflections, but I'm pretty sure this is just in here for consistency's sake, because if you have an ANR combo, it does still just work. I am currently 0-2 with this deck. Both times that I tried playing it, I got aggroed down before I could really do anything about it, so do be warned. This is a hard deck to make work, and this just might be another example of a deck that Jambre made for Jambre, because only Jambre can make it work. So if you want to play Druid and you want to make use of your Restraza and your Reno and Druid in particular, this might be the way of going about it. And this deck does look very clean, to say the least. However, I just don't understand how exactly this deck is trying to win outside of maybe doing like a Beetle combo with the ETC or doing an Ignis combo with Forbidden Fruit. That does make a lot of sense. But other than that, survivability is #1 with this deck, to the point where we're even running an Armor Vendor. So it's like, I don't personally believe in this deck, but I do believe in Jambre. And if Jambre says this deck is good, then you just need to be a 5-head Hearthstone player in order to play it. But if you want to play some Druid, go ahead and give this a try and let me know how it works, because I might try making a deck guide on this video, on this particular deck, but I haven't won with it yet, to say the least. And now I'm going to show you guys some based Paladin decks. Big Paladin is a good deck in Hearthstone, to the point where PocketTrain did technically hit rank 1 Legend with this deck, but PocketTrain could hit rank 1 Legend with a wet paper bag. So if you're someone that wants Big Paladin to be a playable deck, now is the time to start playing this, because I do believe that Kangor is going to get significantly weaker when we don't have cards like Neptulon, when we don't have cards like Leviathan. I believe Onoyo Troop is staying another expansion. Okay, yeah, the Onoyo Troop is staying in the rotation, but Mask Reveler is another card that we are losing in Big Paladin, the card that's been here since the very beginning. Well, I mean, I guess Kangor was the real reason why this deck became a thing to start it, but regardless, Mask Reveler going away is a really big hit to big decks, because this has just been the core card that has been in every single big deck since Castle Nathria came out. So this deck is losing a lot of support. I would play it now if you want to try and get some, memories of this deck before rotation happens. But the big reason why this deck works, it's just Wind Fury. You stick a minion, you buff it with Deputization Aura and the Double Garden's Grace to give it essentially 11 attack plus Wind Fury, and that just wins the game. I really do believe that Shroomskavate should not have been printed as a card for Paladin, because my biggest fear with this card is that it would just be used as a 3-mana Wind Fury, and you're not going to care about the Excavate Treasures. That is exactly what is going on with this deck in particular. Even though it is Big Paladin, it's very spicy, it's very cool, I just find that it wins in a very lame way because of Shroomskavate. But if you want to play the base Paladin, even though it does have a very unbased win condition, the fact that Kangor works very well, and you can bring back a second Kangor at Tears, this deck just simply, it just works from time to time. So if you want to play some big minions, this is probably the easiest way to gain ranks while also having fun by playing big minions. I'm not going to talk too much about this deck because I have not seen anybody really play this, but Quark, our good friend Quark that actually helped us initiate the synergies and the optimization on Rainbow DK. This is the deck that he sent me when he's like, you know what, you can play this deck in order to catch some people off guard, and apparently it does have some decent ways of winning. I'm not going to tell you what the win condition is. This deck just feels like a dust bait where there's just so many legendary cards you have to make for it, to where I would not recommend crafting this unless you're just someone that has a lot of dust that they're sitting on, or just really likes Paladin. In the ETC, Deputization Aura, Steam Cleaner, and Frontlines, don't ask me why Frontlines is in this deck. I really don't know. But if you want to play an XL Reno Renathal deck, this might be the best way of doing that cursed archetype of Renathal Reno with 40 individual cards, technically 43 if you count in the ETC. But yeah, this is a deck that some people can apparently win with a top legend. It's just not a lot of people. Maybe you can be one of them, though. Next up, we have Micaiah Demon Hunter, which is just the big Demon Hunter, and there was some confusion going in the last video where I did technically showcase 2 different lists, one with Ignis, one without it, and that's because Micaiah was testing an Ignis version of the deck when I copied his list originally, and I just assumed it was the same list, so that is my fault. You guys can go ahead and type blame HELLSCREAM in the chat, and I will go ahead and just be like, yeah, you're right. I can't even be mad at you. I'm 100% in the wrong here. But if you do want to win some games with big demons, this might be the best version of the deck to be playing. We got 3 of the Nagas, so that way we can consistently get our big demon scam. It's all about adding in as many demons as you can into the res pool for All Hell Breaks Loose, to where you can potentially bring back 2 or even 3 Illidari Inquisitors if you are lucky enough. I don't know how, but Micaiah did say in his video that it is technically possible. But wait, hold on, I think I just figured it out. So, like, you have double Illidari Inquisitor. You play 1 All Fell Breaks Loose to bring back another Illidari Inquisitor, and then that's 3 that have died, so you can actually play 3 off of the infused All Fell Breaks Loose. So, boom, that's how we did it. We just figured it out in real time. But yeah, if you want to play big Demon Hunter and actually win games, this might be the best version of the deck to play. And don't forget to check out Micaiah's information in the previous video. He's got a Twitch channel and a Twitter account. So if you want to see someone talking about big Demon Hunter, go ahead and check out his content, because he is the only person that I've been able to see play this deck perfectly. I'm going to talk about these decks very quickly, because I don't want to be the person that actually initiates people on playing Priest under the ladder. That's always been my biggest worry as a Hearthstone content creator, is that I am going to tell a large audience about a deck I really do not like, and I'm going to see that deck a lot frequently. So if you're going to play these archetypes, just don't queue into me, okay? But yeah, to quickly go over these Priest archetypes that are very cursed, there's Infinite Priest that makes, fizzle combos with Reno as a possibility of just, completely ignoring your opponent's win conditions, deleting their boards, and then having Ignis Wind Fury weapons that completely kill your opponent. But if you don't want to play Infinite Ignises and Renos, then you can just play this version of the deck that plays Hedanis OTK with more of like an overheal package with cards like Hidden Gem, Injured Hauler, as well as Pip the Potent, in order to give you extra funnel cakes, extra fan clubs, or even like extra flash heals, so that way your Hedanis OTK is legitimately an OTK. Like, I will say that even though I don't like Priest, this is probably the coolest Priest deck that we've seen in quite some time, to where Hedanis actually does see meta-relevant play, at least at the very top high echelons of the Hearthstone ladder. But yeah, Thirsty Drifter is the real reason why this deck works so consistently. You still have Ignis as like a big way of getting some payoff with your Forge cards, like the Creation Protocol. But yeah, this deck is getting a lot of game over at Top Legend, to the point where some people are actually playing Overheal Priest. I do not have a list for that, unfortunately. But yeah, Priest is really evolving at Top Legend, but at all other, ladders and all different ranks, Priest is just really not that powerful right now. Not because I don't think it's that good, it's just people don't want to play it, which is good. Hearthstone community, keep saying no to playing Priest decks, especially this next deck, because, oh my god. You guys are even lucky that I'm showing you this deck right now, because I do not want any of you to ever play this against me. And the only reason why I'm showcasing this is because I have to in good faith. There are some Priest players that watch this channel, but guess what? I'm not telling you how to play this deck. Instead, I'm just going to tell you to watch Theo HS over at twitch.tv, because he is the person that made this deck. He's the reason why it's becoming popular, and apparently every single time that I have queued into Control Priest, I have lost, but that's because I'm playing decks like Rainbow DK, and Rainbow DK does not stand a chance against this deck. You want to know why? Because Whirlpool exists. I fucking hate this card. I fucking hate Priest, and I never want you guys to queue this into me. So if you're going to play this deck, don't tell me about it. But I'm not going to tell you how to play it. I'm not going to tell you how this deck wins outside of the Whirlpool shenanigans. Just don't play Priest. Yeah, there we go. Let's move on to the next deck, because I hate Priest, and we got to delete it from Hearthstone. And the last deck that I'll be showcasing to you guys is Miracle Rogue. This is probably the only real shot that this deck has to see play before, Sinstone Graveyard and Draka do rotate out of the meta. Why do I have a golden Draka? I don't know. I played a lot of Rogue, and the game just decided to give me this card. But honestly, I should disenchant it, because this card is cursed, right? But yeah, the way that this deck wins, you just play a whole bunch of cards. You play a large Sinstone Graveyard and a large Draka weapon. But you really got to know when to go for the combo and when to not go for it, because you do have Swiftstale Trickster with your 777s in order to give you a large hand, to a point where you might have a good chance of doing like a Prep Bone combo into Toon Mana Trickster, play 0 mana 777s into a whole bunch of cards all in one turn. But you might need to set up the 777s in some situations if you don't have, a lot of cards in hand, or if you just don't have a way of being able to initiate a lot of combos combos in one turn. So I would say that if you want to play Miracle Rogue, this might be the most fun way of being able to do so. But just know this deck's kind of, like, it's a bit of a brick, where it either works really well or it just does not work at all. So I would say that if you want to try and give this deck one more whirl before it rotates out, go ahead and give it a try. Some people were winning with this deck at top 100 Legend, but there's definitely a reason why Mining Rogue is a lot more, popular on the ladder than this deck, because this deck is just a glass cannon. It either sings and can't possibly lose because you have the biggest weapon in the world, or you just didn't have the card draw and you die on the board because you have absolutely nothing that you're doing. So if you want to play some Miracle Rogue, go ahead and try out this deck before it rotates out in the next month or two, because guess what? Draka's probably not going to be in the core set, and nor should it, in my opinion. But those are the best decks in the meta, as well as the most fun decks in the meta. And since I've been really struggling with having fun, I wanted to try and showcase as many different archetypes as possible, to where I believe I showcase a deck in almost every single class. So if you guys like these kind of videos, like the video, subscribe, check out the Patreon, yada, yada, yada. Most people don't watch all the way to the end, so I'm just going to go ahead and wrap up this video for the people that are here. But if you did make it to the end of this video, go ahead and type, "Hi Clark, I love X deck," like whatever deck that you like in this video. Let me know what you guys want to see in the future, so that way I can figure out how many Priest mains are actually in this channel. But thank you so much for making it to the end of this video, and we'll see you for the next one.